This is the Life Truth Network. Welcome to Life Truth Presents, a clean fiction podcast. If it's clean fiction, it's fair game. My goal is to come alongside Clean Fiction Magazine over at cleanfictionmagazine.com. They sell their quarterly publications on Amazon. If it's not the type of thing covered in CFM, I want it to be here. That gives you, the listener, access to even more clean fiction. You could even hear interviews, game reviews, featured audio drama reviews, and some of the dramas themselves. I want this to be big. Summer is hot, and so is the summer edition of Clean Fiction Magazine. Once again, it's a top seller in its category. Do you have a business or interest that you'd like to advertise on Clean Fiction Magazine? Well, did you know that I could get you $5 off? That's right, $5 off of advertising at Clean Fiction Magazine. Now, all you got to do is you go over to cleanfictionmagazine.com, find where you purchase advertising, and then when it asks for a coupon code, use my last name, Caldwell. Go ahead and put it in all caps. Caldwell, and that will get you $5 off an ad purchase. I tell you something, purchasing advertisement at Clean Fiction Magazine not only helps Clean Fiction Magazine keep going, but it also helps me and my family, as we are given a small bit every time an ad is purchased through us. Right now, till about mid-August, we're going to be having, actually we are currently having, a writers competition. There are awards involved. It's called Windows into the Multiverse. And if you're interested, check out cleanfictionmagazine.com. Any further details you can find as far as links to go to specifically, I'll try to remember to put all that in the show notes. Remember though, for rules and detailed information, you should be pretty good to just go to cleanfictionmagazine.com. If I remember, I'll try to put a more direct link into the show notes. Again, there are awards, but you have a limited time to do this. It's mid-August and it's done. So don't miss out. Welcome to Clean Fiction Magazine. Today we're going to look at a tale of an alien coming to Earth that doesn't want to invade. Interesting. What's more, they actually want to help. Now, a full review of this should be coming in Clean Fiction Magazine in the fall issue. But today we're going to put it on, well, half of it on the podcast. Does that hurt that I'm doing that? I don't think so. Because I have been known to put things that I do myself as a review on the podcast. And this is just hopefully a way to get more eyes on Daniel Mynyk and his work. So, without further ado, we will go ahead and listen to the first half of Tales of the Superblians, or rather, The Tale of the Superblians, from Daniel Mynyk and Truth Espresso.
Truth Espresso, episode 302.
In a world gone bonkers.
It is not, generally speaking, unruly, but fires have been started and...
Where the culture is a dumpster fire.
We're coming for your children.
And churches have lost their way.
I am really uncomfortable with the story of the crucifixion.
It's time to wake up. With Truth Espresso.
Truth Espresso.
Your weekly shot of truth. And now your host, Daniel Mynyk.
Well, welcome, friends, family, foes, and lurkers alike. This is your host, Daniel Mynyk, for another episode of Truth Espresso. And if you saw the title of this episode, Redux, The Tale of the Superblians, perhaps you might be thinking that this episode is a redo of something that's done before. And in some ways, that's correct. I am going to resurrect for this episode The Tale of the Superblians, which is a kind of a sci-fi satire story, a short story that teaches economics from a Christian perspective, but it involves an alien invasion. And if you haven't listened to those episodes that I did way back toward the end of 2020, I would normally say I would highly recommend that you listen to them. And I still do, but you can listen to all three parts of that combined into one long episode. So around that time, of course, we know what was going on. We were getting ready for a presidential election, and we all know what happened with that one. We knew that there was a lot of turmoil going on. There was the Hunter Biden laptop saga that was being covered up. We still had a lot of places in lockdown at the time. A lot of society was still doing lockdown. There were mask mandates all over the place. People still were kind of sheltered at home, or when they went about to do their business shopping, they had to wear masks. People were still afraid of getting sick. So it seemed to me at the time to write and record a little short story that I wanted to be able to teach us how to think about the world around us, how to think about the mindset of a lot of the political class and how they think, and to expose that a little bit by having an alien invasion, an actual alien invasion in this story, The Tale of the Superblians, but have the alien invasion not what we might think of as a typical alien invasion in a sci-fi story or movie. These aliens turn out to be benefactors of society. And it seems like everything that they're going to give humanity, the Earthlings, helps them out. But sometimes when people are misinformed by politics and the theories of economists like Dr. Paul Krugman, things that would normally make common sense turn into the enemy of society. And so I kind of expose this in this story. So if you enjoy science fiction, but also with a twist to teach economics from a biblical perspective, from a liberty perspective, and in an entertaining way, I hope you will enjoy this redux of The Tale of the Superblians, and you don't have to listen to 3 different episodes for it. You can enjoy it in one sitting. And now as I was listening to the 3 parts of The Tale of the Superblians, I realized just how nerdy it kind of got into economics. But I think the message is clear enough there, and I also touched on the cultural Marxism that we face in society and in politics today. And so I demonstrate from the Superblians, the aliens who invade, quote-unquote, the Earth, how sentiments toward them seem to reflect this cultural Marxist ideology that always tries to pit people against those who actually help them, as if the ones who help them are the oppressors because they happen to be living better than the ones that they help. And so this Tale of the Superblians is intended to be a satire that should help us as we battle the principalities and powers that be, where those who claim to be wanting to do the right thing are actually just trying to amass political power for themselves as they try to keep the successes of the populace under their control. Because when people are allowed to live free, to work hard, to enjoy the fruits of their labor, to make exchanges according to the dictates of the Bible, those in power see that as a threat to their ability to keep the populace under their thumb. And so as you listen to the Tale of the Superblians, you will kind of see that as things unfold toward the end of the story. Now, some of the names that are mentioned, like Dr. Bob Murphy, Dr. Thomas E. Words, Dr. Paul Drugman, Megan Skelly, and more, of course, are parody names to actual people. And so you might recognize some of them. The economists, of course, if you don't recognize their names, just know that they're parody names of actual people. And so without further ado, here comes the story. It was a day like any other. In other words, it was an ordinary day. Wait, just exactly what is an ordinary day? I mean, come on, no 2 days are exactly alike. And who gets to define what falls within the window of an ordinary day? Okay, fine. We'll just stick with the ambiguous concept of an ordinary day. On this ordinary day, in the open fields of a small town in the state of Kansas, where everything is extraordinarily ordinary, the most ordinariest of ordinary guys saw something that wasn't ordinary. Well, what extraordinary thing does the most ordinary guy usually see in the open fields of the American Midwest? If you said a UFO, you would be correct. I guess that makes this extraordinary thing not so extraordinary after all. What in tarnation is that thing? Muttered Jake, our ordinary guy. You see, Jake, being a ranch hand, an ordinary guy, had never seen anything like it. But he had heard of other such sightings. Being a reasonable guy, Jake figured there must be a reasonable explanation. His eyes surely were deceiving him. After 10 solid seconds of witnessing a massive rotating technological marvel hovering about 200 feet above the ground and blaring various lights across the sky, Jake peered into the sky as the UFO warped out of sight. Jake massaged his eyes a bit with his knuckles and glared a second time, to no avail. The mysterious craft was gone, as if it had never been. Jake reacted as any responsible Midwestern American would. He stood erect, stiff as a board, trembling and with eyes as wide as saucers. Yes, after 2 minutes of a loosened jaw trance, Jake finally galloped to his car and made a beeline for the police station. He knew that his story would seem far-fetched. Who would believe him? He was the only one visible in that vast open field in rural Kansas to see this amazing spectacle. Of course. Unfortunately, Jake was beyond his opportunity to be on Unsolved Mysteries. Now, if you don't remember or know what Unsolved Mysteries is, you're too young. When Jake entered the police station, he tried to remain calm, but for some reason, the female officer at the desk could read his eyes. It was as if she knew exactly why he was there.
"May I help you, sir?"
the uniformed woman asked. She seemed ready to respond to the answer. Jake gasped, struggling to fish for his mental dictionary as the situation robbed him of any semblance of intelligent thought. I'm not sure what to say, because I don't know how you will take this. I don't know how to take this either.
"Let me guess,"
the officer interrupted, hoping her foresighted sympathy would calm his nerves.
"You saw something strange hovering in the sky. Am I in the right ballpark?"
Yes," Jake blurted as he huffed a sigh of relief. "How did you know that? Did you see it too? Oh, thank goodness I'm not going mad."
"No, I didn't,"
the woman interrupted while maintaining composure. "Oh," Jake squeaked as he began to lose hope. "Then I could just be a basket case?"
"Here,"
beckoned the female officer as she began to lead Jake near a series of office doors. Into one half-opened office doorway, she shouted,
"Matt, another customer for you."
As Jake trembled, not understanding what was about to happen, the woman patted his shoulder and retorted,
"Don't worry, everything's fine. Really, you will see."
Those rather ambiguous statements did very little to comfort Jake's uneasiness. Soon, a heavy-set man donning a goatee and another blue uniform inched out the office door. All seemed reasonable as the officer grimaced. "Howdy, sir. The name's Matt. Nice to meet you." Officer Matt extended his hand for the friendly gesture. Jake reached to shake his hand and replied, "I'm Jake. Am I in any kind of trouble?" The jolly policeman chuckled almost as if he were St. Nick himself. "Oh, my goodness, no. Let me show you something." Officer Matt lured Jake into his office to show him a montage on his wall. Jake sighed as he encountered an array of articles and blurry photos of what appeared to be UFO sightings. "You are not crazy, if that's what you're thinking," reassured the officer. "You are one of the few, the proud, the privileged." Jake scowled as his fingers twiddled across the display. He swallowed a bit of relief, then suspected that he merely found another member of the Crazy Club. "I'm not suggesting," counseled Officer Matt, "that our little town is being inspected by extraterrestrials. There are plenty of good explanations for what you saw and what these people saw. Most likely, it was some secret government craft looking for an open field, just like the one you were in nearby to test equipment." Jake sighed and stared at Officer Matt like a confused puppy. "I wouldn't worry about it, Jake," said Matt, trying to pep-talk the poor soul. "We live in an area that is ripe for these kinds of sightings. The middle American breadbasket is the stuff that sci-fi movies are made of. We just learn to live with it. Besides, these things add a little excitement to our otherwise drab lives, wouldn't you agree?" Jake smirked and chortled. "Yeah, I'm sure you are right. At least I know I'm in good company." Officer Matt guided Jake back to the lobby. "We're good, Marcia," said Matt to the woman at the desk as he winked. Officer Marcia forwarded the sentiment to Jake.
"You good?"
"Yes, I think so," squeaked Jake, entranced in the moment. Unbeknownst to Jake and the overconfident police, the moment had just begun. The aging television anchored to the right corner, adjoining the entrance to the station, blared the local news station around the clock. The hourly weather report with the beloved Dolly Standish abruptly cut short to an anchor attempting to maintain his composure. "We interrupt your regularly scheduled program for this breaking news report. An unidentified craft has landed about a quarter-mile from City Hall. About a dozen humanoid creatures exited the craft about 5 minutes ago. Police are being dispatched for safety. The president is being informed and armed forces are on their way. As you can see from this distance, the unidentified creatures have a bluish skin and oversized craniums. They seem to be an average of 9 to 10 feet tall. So far, everything else about them compares to the features of our species. No hostile activity has occurred. We will be monitoring this groundbreaking situation until we have a favorable resolution." At this time, the entire police force in the station gathered to glare helplessly at the screen. Jake and Officer Matt slowly turned their speechless glares toward each other. "Do you think," gulped the officer, "this is what you saw?" All Jake could do in reply was shrug his shoulders and grin sheepishly. "It seems that what may be the leader of the group is about to try to communicate," declared the news anchor.
"People of this planet,"
boomed the tallest blue creature. His voice could pierce the soul with its depth and amplitude.
"we mean no harm. We understand that you are startled. We sincerely apologize for that.
Jake, attempting to lighten the situation, muttered, "Why do aliens always speak English?" The authoritative blue figure continued to proclaim,
We have learned about your languages and your cultures within the past year around your sun. We believe we have much to offer your economy. We do not seek to rule or hold any such office.
Jake and Officer Matt glared at each other. "Sounds like a politician if I ever heard one," sneered Jake, hiding his trembling. "Yeah, exactly," muttered his equally terrified companion.
To show that we mean no ill to our intergalactic friends here on planet Earth,
the blue visitor insisted,
we offer a sample of our technology.
Officer Mynyk whispered, "In sci-fi movies, the aliens are always more advanced than we are." Jake nodded, wide-eyed, to anticipate what they were about to see on the screen in that humble police station.
As you can witness on this screen,
the alien began as he held up a square piece of technology in his right hand and faced it toward his audience of news reporters, police, and gathering armed forces with their weapons aimed at him. The alien remained poised, assured that neither side of this encounter would start a conflict. The mysterious micro-sized device in the blue creature's hand instantly projected multiple holographic screens in mid-air to accommodate different viewing angles.
we extracted a sample of seeds from a flowering specimen in a nearby open field.
The audience and all viewers watching this worldwide news gazed helplessly at live footage of a sunflower with some of its seeds removed from the center.
These are the seeds from this plant right here in my hand.
The speaker presented his left hand and opened it, showing the same seeds. All the holographic screens instantly displayed live footage of his open hand with the seeds.
Now, if you will kindly observe, my assistant Zella will demonstrate our sample technology.
As Zella, a fellow blue creature a few inches shorter and apparently female, approached to grab the seeds, the leader quipped,
By the way, if you were all wondering, the holographs were not the technology I was talking about, but let that count as another sample.
Cautious chuckles erupted for a moment as the spectators eased their guard a bit.
And now, a demonstration,
the blue leader declared as he instructed Zella to plant the seeds in a large pot.
As you can see, my assistant Zella has begun the arduous task of planting this botanical seed. I believe that this is that of a sunflower, as you call it. Am I correct?
The news reporter began to nod, soon followed by others as they all assessed their standing to disagree.
Good,
chuckled the towering leader, determined to magnify his innocuous presence.
As you can see, we have done our homework. We have no such plant life form on our planet. I admit that I find Earth's specimen of the sunflower quite fascinating.
Jake whispered to his new officer friend, "Does this mean they're going to take away all of our sunflowers? I guess if that's all they want, it's not too bad of an invasion, right?" Officer Matt chuckled quietly through his teeth. The poised invader jovially commanded,
Now then, Zella, demonstrate.
Zella grasped a small gun-like device from her waist belt and aimed it at the flower pot. The armed human arsenal immediately reacted and raised their weapons and pointed them at Zella. The leader placed his palm toward Zella to assure her that no danger would take place. He continued to show no hostility or offense from human reactions. The alien commander smiled as he waited for his armed opponents to calm. After 15 seconds of stand down, the alien quipped,
I promise you this is for your benefit. You can continue to react fearfully and lose your only chance to marvel. Or you can share with us this moment of mutual triumph. Your choice.
After another 15 seconds, the commanding officer of the human armed forces shifted his stare from the blue creature to his right, then to his left. He nodded to both sides to lower their firearms. Each officer scowled as he or she, one by one, lowered a gun. The alien slightly increased his smile. Somehow, peace spread across the spectators ever so slightly.
You have chosen wisely,
affirmed the alien superior.
Now, behold, a foretaste of your destiny.
Zella glared for a split second at the helpless humans, then mashed a button on the device. A bright, multicolored series of wavelengths coursed to the pot. The female alien released the button and faced the leader to await any further commands.
Now, if you will grant us patience,
the leader directed,
within seconds you will witness a new wonder of modern technology.
Officer Myke whispered to his new civilian friend, "Wow, did we luck out? The biggest news of the millennium. An undeniable close encounter of the fourth kind, and all they want from us are sunflowers." Jake snickered while his eyes remained glued to the office screen. The Blue Sovereign lectured,
"The soil hides what transpires at the moment. The seed inches under the surface is now germinating. Another 5 seconds will reveal all."
On cue, a sprout, as if by proper sunlight, water, and full hibernation, stretched and snaked upward from the surface of the pot. The spectacle were as if a camera had filmed the growth of a sunflower through the whole growing season and sped it up. It was beautiful to behold. Within the span of 1 minute, the sprout climbed to full height and budded. The petals emerged from their green, pre-ripened condition and animated into full bloom. Before all viewers across the globe stood a mature sunflower that began as a seed a mere minute ago. The leader grinned to approve the awestruck spectators as they mumbled among themselves. The trembling news reporter raised his hand, hoping the alien understood the gesture. The Blue Wonder pointed his direction and affirmed,
"Yes, sir. You have a question, no doubt."
"Yes, sir. Your Majesty," the anchor gulped. The Blue Leader's grin enlarged as he raised his palm to quell the man's stumbling.
"My name is Zorg. No need for formalities. And to answer the question you are about to ask, yes, our rapid biogenetic technology affects more plant life than sunflowers."
The alien clasped his hands to begin another eager lecture.
"The device that Zella wields analyzes the molecular compounds of the plant and calculates its biogenetic needs. It then emits a combination of waves and particles that translate internally into the formula not only for the amount of sunlight, water, and nutrients the plant needs to mature, but also the composition that it needs to grow within the span that you just witnessed. You may now wonder if this engineered sunflower is equal to its slower peers. I assure you that it is very much like any other of its kind that have had months or years to grow."
The blue alien, now known as Zorg, paced to the right as he delivered his good news.
"To answer your next question, yes, this really does mean the end to world hunger."
Zorg paused to let the spectators gather their thoughts and mutter among themselves. Yet, knowing their next question, he interjected,
"I'm sure your next thoughts are of reciprocation. The answer is no, we demand no payment."
The news anchor asked, "Zorg, sir, our president is on his way. He is our leader and can make proper negotiations with you."
"Great,"
approved Zorg with his hands clasped.
"I will explain our desires more fully when he arrives, but let me put your minds at ease until then. We, the Superblians of the planet Superblia, as we have roughly translated its name into your language, have no intention to subjugate or rule over you or anyone else on this planet. We are a peaceful race who have built up our society, our culture, and our technology through cooperation, integrity, and harmony. We know nothing of violence on our planet, which has afforded us our rapid productivity.
Jake, Officer Matt, and Officer Marcia all scowled at each other and shrugged.
We are on a mission,
continued the friendly Superblian,
to improve the livelihoods of all planets inhabited by thoughtful sentient beings. We recognize that not all races are blessed with a history such as ours. This demonstration is but a token of what we will offer in exchange simply for this. We wish only for a pilot sample of Superblians to live among the humanity of Earth. We will integrate our services in your society and in your economy. We will engage gleefully in free exchange with your people. We do not wish a separate colony on Earth. We desire to be your next-door neighbors, to build with you, to eat with you, to celebrate with you, and to share with you. We will facilitate our exchanges using whatever forms of currency you desire. We want our goods and services to be valued freely according to your price system. We wish to celebrate your new life as you celebrate ours. For all intents and purposes, we will be humans among you, but we will not suppress the fruits of our labor any more than we wish you to suppress yours. Together, let's end hunger on Earth and build a better planet.
And with these words, communications erupted. The Superblians generously extended their hands to embrace those of the bedazzled humans whose gathering in that middle American town continued to swell. Fear and hostility disappeared as the humans and Superblians laughed together and shared their experiences and knowledge. The president arrived as fast as Air Force One could safely land him, taxi him, and escort him through the massive crowds. Other world leaders soon followed. The wit and candor of the blue aliens enchanted any human who got to know them. Their gentle strength and intellect tranquilized the concerns of the biggest and most unusual event in recorded history. The Superblians introduced other amazing technologies to improve living conditions for all humanity. As Zorg had promised, world hunger quickly became a thing of the past within 1 year. As no one lacked for food, they focused their energies elsewhere. In delightful recipes, in recreational facilities, in tourism, in building houses that only the wealthy could afford but 1 year ago. The poorest humans could buy their own amazing living accommodations after only 6 months of work. The need for mortgages began to fade away. Sure, hardship and death still existed and remained, but compared to a year ago, these realities were much more tame. The average human lifespan increased by an amazing 20 years. Not only was the measure of poverty very much diminished, but the quality of food increased. Diets were also healthier. Avenues for exercise were much more effective as well as leisurely. More people than ever before found that the purchasing power of their earnings allowed them to save more and retire early. Increased technology in healthcare from the Superblians improved the standard of living of most people with handicaps and serious medical conditions. Some handicaps could be cured while others could be aided with supplemental devices to make a normal life as approachable as possible. Near the end of a year since the Superblians arrived, many on their deathbeds could depart in comfort and style. One strange fact that the humans discovered after getting to know the Superblians is that they held to strong views of both faith and freedom. They always believed in one true God, and they quickly converted to Christianity after studying the societies and history of Earth. Hey, this is my story. Just deal with it. The Superblians strongly practiced charity, but they rejected human forms of government that enforced monopolies. They explained that this was coercion and morally inferior. They never pushed to set up a central bank or a central healthcare system. Yet the technology they introduced to Earth seemed to work wonders with healthcare needs. The Superblians believed in free speech. They held their strong opinions, but believed that freedom would manifest truth. Cordial conversations and debates, rather than top-down propaganda control, were the way to reveal absolute truth. Many humans didn't know how to handle these ideas in the face of clear prosperity. For now, the situation was simply a paradox in the minds of many. I would like to say, and they all lived happily ever after. But we all know that's for fairy tales, not science fiction. This tale of the Superblians has not yet ended. This is part 1. In the next part, we will see how the humans begin to understand their relationship with the Superblians. We will see how the so-called experts and the politicians and the economists handle all the newfound prosperity. In a world full of woke coffee companies, where can you go to get that fresh, hot, caffeinated cup of bliss to start your day without giving your money to help woke causes? That's why Blackout Coffee supports the causes you care about while giving you great coffee. Blackout Coffee works directly with farmers and local cooperatives to provide only the freshest and most flavorful beans for direct trade goodness. Signature blends range from their smooth finish light roast to the brutal awakening dark roast and pitch black espresso dark roast. Blackout Coffee supports traditional American values, military, and first responders. For every bag you buy, Blackout Coffee will send 2 cups of coffee to active duty military members. You can also donate Blackout Coffee care packages directly to active military units from their website. Our men and women in uniform will thank you while they get to enjoy bold, premium coffee that cares for America, and so will you. For non-coffee drinkers or those who enjoy other hot beverages, Blackout Coffee offers an array of comforting loose-leaf teas, from old-fashioned Earl Grey to passion fruit peach black tea. They have everything a tea aficionado is after. Oh, and I can't gloss over their hot cocoa. Decadent flavors from dark chocolate to chocolate peppermint patty to chocolate cherry dump cake and even banana pudding. Perfect when cozying up under a warm blanket. During the summer months, you could just crank up your AC and get out your blanket. Well, you don't really have to do that to enjoy Blackout Coffee's hot cocoa all year round. Be awake, not woke, with a soothing hot cup of Blackout Coffee by going to truthhub.org/blackout or go to blackoutcoffee.com and use the coupon code TruthSpresso at checkout to get 20% off your order. That's truthhub.org/blackout. Or go to blackoutcoffee.com and use the coupon code TruthSpresso at checkout and save 20% on some incredible patriotic coffee, tea, or hot cocoa today. Now, we pick up our story 1 year after the events that transpired in the previous episode of the Tale of the Superblians. It was a day like any other day. Well, an ordinary day in the life of human and Superblian living together in apparent harmony. True to their word, the Superblians never tried to overthrow any human system of government. No Superblian dreamed of running for public office. The superior alien race simply worked hard for their fellow Superblian and human neighbor alike. Even many humans gradually adapted to the kind of liberty, personal responsibility, generous voluntary charity, and increasing productivity of the Superblians. The Superblians, according to various tests administered by humans, were on average 10 times smarter and 10 times stronger than the best human of either of those categories. But what of this ordinary day? The earth had never been blessed materially as it had been any year prior. Better nutrition, better health, more productive work, better leisure, and better living standards appeared to leave no question in the mind of any ordinary human that things were better and just. This strange alien race that seemed to rescue humanity from its looming problems also renewed cultural interest in the God of the Bible, much to the chagrin of atheist humans who try to focus on the finer points of the aliens' science and technology. But back to our ordinary day. The major media sources for the past year had been tame toward the friendly invaders. Yet the New York Times, of course, dared to break course with conventional news reporting. Dr. Paul Drugman, a frequent contributor to the New York Times, published a controversial article entitled, "Is This Really Prosperity?" Now, Drugman had not changed his views within the last year, and still had been writing articles for the New York Times. His opinions were present, but veiled to those other than his like-minded companions. Drugman closely followed what is called the Keynesian school of economics. His influence virtually disappeared as the freedom-loving aliens gradually changed the thinking of most people indirectly through how they interacted in the economy and improved the lives of everyone, including the poorest humans in the poorest countries. In his column for the New York Times, Drugman asked, "Are we setting ourselves up for the biggest fiscal cliff bar none in human history? By all measures of living standards, humans are doing better than they were last year, but professional economists recognize that depressions can happen when we least expect them. We need to look at other factors besides increased living standards to distinguish between a real sustainable economy and a bubble economy. Several trends concern me as an economist that are telltale signs that we could be on the brink of a crash that would make the Great Depression of the 1930s, the Great Recession following the real estate bubble of the millennium's first decade, and even the COVID-19 pandemic look like Sunday afternoon picnics. One of these is the alarming upward trend in personal and corporate savings. Now, to the untrained economist, this looks like a good thing. More savings means more money to spend, right? But the trained economist recognizes that increased savings is a sign of declining aggregate demand. As more and more people save their extra money because their currency is strengthening, their spending habits will decline. Unless this massive increase in output is coupled with a proportionate increase in consumer spending, the price deflation that we are witnessing now will not happen long before our new living standards start to take their toll on employment. Economists, even in the 20th century, who knew nothing of our level of prosperity, recognized this paradox. A reduced need to spend, coupled with increased savings, would lead to losses in the job market as demand for needed consumer goods decreases. They recognize that overproduction would lead to underconsumption, followed by recession, and then depression. Following this reduced activity and increased unemployment will be the further perception that we all need to tighten our belts. I can see bankruptcies, foreclosures, and poverty looming on the horizon. We are about to be victims of our own success. We have our welcome visitors to thank for this economic roller coaster. I urge central banks around the world to prepare for the worst. Untold levels of fiscal stimulus may be our only hope to fish us out of the coming economic swamp." Jake read this dire headline as it beamed to his uber-cool pocket supercomputer. To Jake, and to many others like him, the economy was obviously much better than it was a year ago. Having been able to pay off his ranch house mortgage by the end of the year was a complete godsend. How could all this prosperity be an illusion? The ranch hand knew that Dr. Drugman's brain could outwit him in a New Dork minute. Certainly, Dr. Drugman was the professional economist. He had to know something to show for his influence. Went Jake's front door. Jake stumbled to the door and cracked it open. There stood his ranch pal, Pete, as if he had seen something in the field. "Why, Pete, something up?" The silent coworker fidgeted for his phone. Retrieving the device from his coat pocket, Pete faced the screen at Jake's face and projected a holographic image an inch from his nose. Jake paced backwards 2 steps to make out what racked his friend's nerves. "Have you read today's breaking article?" beamed the wide-eyed companion in the doorway. "Yeah," blurted Jake as he felt overcome by Pete's sense of alarm. I read it this morning." Pete nodded while maintaining his trance. After about 8 seconds of awkward silence, Pete stammered, "So, what did you think about it?" "I don't know," barked Jake as he waved his hands. "I don't understand half of what he's saying." Pete scowled and bloated. "Don't you know who Dr. Drugman is?" "I've heard the name," Jake interjected. "He writes a lot for the New Dork Times. Does he have you all up in a tizzy?" Pete trudged in from the doorway and planted his palms on Jake's shoulders. "And he's the smartest economist alive," bellowed the trembling companion. Feeling a bit parental, Jake gently peeled Pete's hands off his shoulders and sighed. "So," he insisted, "smarts don't make you right." Pete squinted his eyes and retreated a baby step. "You do realize," he lectured, "that the guy has predicted every time things got bad before they happened." "Really?" replied the unschooled herdsman as he scratched his chin. "Yeah, Jake, he knows his stuff. He can see what we common folk can't." Jake shrugged and plopped his hands on his sides. "I don't know, Pete. All I know is things are better this year than last year. I'm out of debt. Isn't that a good thing? The bank got its money back with interest. Isn't that a good thing? My cousin got a surgery to remove a cancerous tumor that would have never been discovered or removable just a year ago. Isn't that a good thing? You have that nifty phone that can project things in the air. Isn't that a good thing?" Jake's eager companion paced in a small circle. "I know it doesn't make sense, Jake," surrendered Pete as he raised his palms. "It doesn't make sense to me either, but Dr. Drugman explains how things that don't make sense to us make perfect sense to him. All I know is he knows his stuff and we don't." Jake strode toward Pete and placed his hands on Pete's shoulders. "Pete, buddy," he pleaded, "did you come here just to tell me about the article?" Pete grinned sheepishly. "Well, not quite, Jake. A couple of our buds and I are attending a meeting tonight. You're welcome to join us." "I'm almost afraid to ask what it's about," snapped Jake, crossing his arms and slouching. Pete grinned, then announced, "Jake, did you notice within the last year a lot of farmers have left the fields?" Jake replied with a snicker, "'Cause they found something else to do. After the Superblians ended world hunger by taking the work out of farming, they didn't need to farm anymore." "Exactly," sneered Pete as he cupped his hands. "Isn't that a problem? These aliens are putting farmers out of work." Raising his index finger, Pete lectured, "Where's our dignity?" "Now, hold on, Pete," replied Jake, palms raised. "Let's think this through. Sure, a lot of farmers stop farming, but what is that when food is practically free? Even the ones who haven't found another job are still better off. They're not starving, Pete." Pete chuckled. "You don't get it, Jake. I don't think either of us really get it, but Dr. Drugman gets it. And who do you think you are to counter him? He's far smarter than you'll ever be." "That's true," snickered Jake. "But aren't the Superblians smarter than he is? I'd take a gander they are. A lot smarter." Pete cackled a bit to pondered. "That's true," he blurted, waving his index finger. "But are any of them economists? They may know how to make newfangled gizmos, but do they understand the big picture? I mean, the really big picture? I doubt it, Jake." The confused rancher rubbed his chin, then interrupted. "So, what's the meeting about, Pete?" Pete grinned, restoring his composure. "We're talking about what farmers should do about our jobs. We might organize a protest." Jake buried his face in his right palm and shook his head. "Pete, please, you're my friend. Don't do this." Pete tilted his head with a smile. "Jake," he replied with compassion, "I know you work for what you believe in. You just need help finding what that is." He turned around and marched for the door. "Pete, you're just going to cause trouble." Pete raised a palm to dismiss the comment and continued to stride outside. "Pete," shouted a desperate Jake, "we didn't protect the seamstresses from the sewing machines. We didn't protect the coal miners from electricity. We adjust, Pete. The world is better for it. We can't be selfish against the good of others, Pete." The idealistic friend continued to ignore Jake's pleas as he faded out of sight. No sooner had Pete disappeared when Jake whipped out his phone and projected a search on Drugman's article in the air in front of him. Pete skipped the immediate glaring coverage of Drugman's article and noticed the fifth result in the list. It was a video created by a certain Robert P. Murphy. Jake had never heard of Murphy before, but he decided to watch. This video was a timely response to Drugman's article published earlier that same day. Jake began to watch the video to see what a possible informed response to the popular Paul Drugman article would entail.
"It's ironic," claimed Robert Murphy in the video, "that Paul Drugman is complaining now. How often he and his leftist think tank companions used to say that the evil capitalists want to throw your grandmother out in the streets. He claims they stand in the way of solutions to things like world hunger just for their own self-interest. But now we see world hunger eliminated. We see health care improved by leaps and bounds. But Drugman's all up in arms because these things weren't solved in the ways he expected. If the solution isn't more government to solve the problem, it can't be a sustainable solution in Drugman's mind. It's interesting that Drugman himself called for the threat of a fake alien invasion to stimulate the economy. Yet, we got a real alien invasion that wasn't hostile. We didn't have to expend resources building bunkers and armaments for a big fight on our hands. The aliens came and they were peaceful. They actually stimulated our economy by working with us and giving us new technology to make things more efficient. For all intents and purposes, this is the alien invasion we needed. The apparent need for government control has subsided. The Superblians have added to the free market and made it freer and more prosperous. But Drugman doesn't like that. He really thinks our economy can only be sustained with ever more record levels of deficit spending, prolonged Fed fund rates at 0%, and more central planning. He's alarmed that interest rates have steadily climbed over the last year because we're able to afford things like houses and businesses without as much borrowing. But who's suffering? The banks? They don't need a bailout anytime soon because lenders have been able to repay at these higher rates. Borrowers? No, because they're not debt slaves for the rest of their lives. They don't need to give up their retirement savings to make interest payments. Businesses? No. Profits have been up through the stratosphere last year. The healthcare industry? There has never been greater demand for new treatments as well as more supply thanks to our Superblian friends. I think the only ones suffering under our new prosperous economy are the bureaucrats whose influence over the economy has waned, and people like Drugman himself because he has had to tone down his language over the past year. I have been a long-time critic of Drugman over the years. I have shown where he contradicts himself within a matter of months. He sets up his predictions so he thinks he wins no matter what the outcome. I encourage you not to take Drugman's column in the New York Times seriously. In fact, it's dangerous. If enough people listen to Drugman, who knows if our peaceful relationship with the Superblians could turn into a costly war. We humans couldn't survive that kind of stimulus.
Jake gasped as the video ended. For some reason, this Dr. Robert P. Murphy seemed to make more sense to his uneducated mind. The pompous language from the popular Dr. Paul Drugman seemed counterintuitive, but what would Jake know? He's just a ranch hand whose life seemed to be getting better after aliens invaded. "Time to head downtown," muttered a curious Jake as he trotted toward his new truck. It was new, by the way, because Jake could now afford a few months ago to replace his beat-up Chevy. A brand-new Chevy pickup that would quickly check his health stats, project traffic estimates with about 99% accuracy for the destination route, and even groom him safely if he needed it. The GPS in the truck notified Jake of anything he wanted to listen to that was related to recent searches. Yes, this does sound a little bit like Google, but it was also guaranteed to be private, encrypted, and not subject to government searches. A pleasant, natural female voice emitted from the omnispatial surround sound microspeakers within the truck.
I noticed you watched a video from Dr. Robert P. Murphy a few minutes ago from your phone. There is a live event from Dr. Thomas E. Words in progress at the convention center downtown. Dr. Words is a personal friend of Dr. Murphy. Would you like to tune in?
Sure, replied the curious rancher as he seemed to thirst for more common sense.
Since you are headed downtown, added the voice, would you like to attend this event?
Jake's eyes bugged. "Oh, wow, I didn't even consider that," he muttered under his breath. "Yes," he exclaimed. The voice affirmed.
Okay, destination set for the convention center. The talk, entitled Drugman Crawls Out of His Shell by Dr. Thomas E. Words, is now in progress. Tuning in.
Jake started to feel like a kid in a candy store. "I wish Pete were here with me to hear this," he snickered. Just then, the speakers connected to the live broadcast.
And that's why I decided to visit you lovely people at the site of that historic moment. A year ago, Drugman was all the rage. Despite being wrong at almost everything for like most of his adult life, people still listen to him like he's God's gift to humanity. It's as if heaven itself has a department of economics and has granted us simpletons an angel in Paul Drugman. He's on loan from on high for as long as it takes to learn glaringly obvious economic truths. Remember Common Core math? Well, here's the new math we are supposed to learn, or rather recover, from our quaint times before our evil capitalist friends arrived. Mathematical truths like debt makes you richer. And if we all get into debt together, money will magically rain from the sky. We just have to be patient, okay? It takes a little time for the supposed paradox of savings to shower us with economic karma. Yes, citizen, do your due diligence. Stop that wretched saving. You're killing us all.
Jake chuckled and sighed. Who is this guy? Some kind of comedian? The streaming voice of Tom Words continued to bedazzle his audience, and Jake in his truck.
Drugman's worried that savings are up to levels we have never seen in recorded history. What Paul Drugman doesn't understand, or pretends not to understand, is that savings are just deferred spending. But savings are a little bit more than that. When you save money, you are planning to spend some or all of it in the future. Keep in mind that word, planning. You are giving some careful thought for how those dollars are used. You want them to be as efficient as possible. And even when we save to splurge later, such as for a fun vacation, we budget that out. But the word budget is like a garlic necklace and a crucifix in the face of Dracula to Paul Drugman. Remember, even our so-called government claims to have a budget. And every year, it's like Armageddon on Capitol Hill over raising the debt ceiling. Every year, it's the same old song and dance. And every year, the government spends far more than it takes in taxes. Why don't we just get rid of the phony budget and save ourselves that annual freak show? But Drugman thinks that neither we nor the government should have a budget. Spending is what drives the economy in the wonderful world of Paul Drugman. Not careful, planned spending by the unwashed masses, mind you, because, citizen, we tend to think differently from our betters in academia. Some of us think it's better to spend less than we earn. How about that foolishness? You know, as much as it helps the credit card company's bottom line when we run up the plastic and pay the highway robbery interest payments, they're not better off if we can't pay back our debts. What good are some interest payments when too many of their credit users have to file bankruptcy?
You know, mankind may not have had the technology the aliens brought, but they did already have the answers to many of the problems they faced. Many of the economic issues. The answers were found, believe it or not, in the Bible. Some knew these important lessons. Others rejected them. Which do you do? Now let's listen to an interview, rather the first half, of an interview that we did on Quest for Truth about Daniel Mynyk and his book, Tale of the Superblians.
I'm not alone here in Church House Studios, as we like to call it. I have another guest with me. He is another of the fellow podcasters at the Christian Podcast Community, christianpodcastcommunity.org. And hey, I might even slip in a fast promo. I don't have a lot of housekeeping, and I'll slip it in right here, and then we'll get started.
What's up, Dad Hackers? My name is Patrick Antonucci, and I am the host and founder of this podcast and community of Dad Hackers. Whether you're new here or have been here for a long time, I want to personally welcome you. Dad Hackers is a community of Christian fathers who are devoted to encouraging, equipping, and enabling one another to become the men that God has created and designed us to be, so that we can raise up the next generation of fully devoted followers of Christ and leave a legacy of multi-generational faithfulness. On this show, we primarily interview Christian men to dive into their experiences and insights into what it means to be a Christian man, a Christian husband, a Christian father, and a leader. We ask questions that dig deep into the thinking and rationale of these men so that we can all learn and grow into the men that God is calling us to be. I'm grateful you've joined us today. Make sure you subscribe so that you never miss any of our episodes. Also, be sure to leave an honest review. Reviews help to boost the show's ratings, which means that more dads are going to come across our show and benefit from the content that we put out. I wanted to let you know that we also have a free private Facebook group just for Christian men. So head on over to facebook.com/group/dadhacker and apply to join by answering the 3 questions when prompted. So that's facebook.com/group/dadhacker.
All right, let's meet our guest, Daniel Mynyk, right?
Yes, you pronounced it correctly.
Yeah, because I know my computer voice never does. It always calls you Daniel Mynyk. I need to train it to not do that. I may have to get into its pronunciation dictionary. And in case you didn't know, and maybe some of our listeners don't know, I am someone who is blind. I use text-to-speech technology to read things to me. So, yeah, that's why I may mispronounce your name. And if I do, I'm sorry.
No problem. I hear my name mispronounced even by friends, so I'm used to it.
Well, yeah, I try not to. Once I learn someone's name, unless I really love to be called a nickname or something, whatever they want to be called, that's how I try to do. But yeah, Daniel, your podcast is called Truth Espresso, and I know you do a lot, of course, Bible teaching, because that's what we do on Christian Podcast Community. But you also have some other interesting topics. I know I really enjoyed your series you did with your wife on the abortion issue. And I know you do a lot of economics type series. But one that recently you've done was something of audio drama. And I know my co-host has some questions about that. And I trying to find these notes here so I can stay on board with what's going to be said. But hey, Nathan Caldwell is here, and he wants to know.
So first off, Daniel, give us a little bit about yourself and your show. When did you get started podcasting?
Well, as Keith mentioned, my name is Daniel Mynyk, and I am the host of the Truth Espresso podcast, although that's not the first time that I attempted a podcast. There's a little bit of history there. So back, I do run a website that I don't update as much as I would like to, called Truth Hub. So truthhub.org is my website. And originally, actually, it all started with a book that I wrote that I don't market that much, but my book that I wrote way back in 2011 is called Freedom to Give, the biblical truth about tithing. And I actually take kind of the controversial position in that book that, like, the Bible does not teach that we're required to tithe in the technical sense, the Christian, but it does teach that we are required to give. And so, that's a discussion for another episode, perhaps. But I wrote the book, Freedom to Give. One of my distant relatives from my wife's side of the family was also interested in publishing a book. And so I explained to him how I published Freedom to Give. And he also showed up at my book signing. And I knew that he had some interesting theological positions, but basically half of my book signing turned into me having a discussion with this family member, not about the topic of my book, but about one of the topics of his book that he was trying to publish soon afterwards. But he basically held a position similar to Jehovah's Witnesses that Jesus is not eternal with the Father. He's not co-equal with God. He's the greatest creation of God. And so I argued the deity of Christ with him for about half the book signing time there. And after I had the discussion with him, I wanted to really study the matter more. And so I studied the deity of Christ, and I came up with a Bible study that I had with my family, not him there, but my immediate family. So for several months, I led a Bible study with them, going through the deity of Christ, the proof for that. And originally my website was freedomtogive.net, but then after the first year, I changed it to truthhub.org and started to blog with a series to prove the deity of Christ and the doctrine of the Trinity. And so that took off in my interest in apologetics. And so as I was getting into apologetics and truthhub.org, I also was listening to podcasts and thought, yeah, I want to try doing that. I don't want to just write, I want to talk. And so in 2015, I started the Truth Hub podcast kind of as part of the content matter of the website. And so I did a few episodes. I was a little bit ambitious because I thought I could create and script out an elaborate fake commercial for every episode. And then I kind of got worn out from trying to do that. And so that aspect of it kind of slowed down the Truth Hub podcast into Podfade. And so later on, back in 2019, just a few years ago now, I got reinterested in podcasting, and I tried to research, like, how do I avoid pod fade? What do I need to do to be a successful podcaster? And I realized, figure out the consistent schedule. Don't try to overburden yourself. Now, originally I tried to, for the Truth Espresso podcast, I was trying to come up with different names instead of.
Oh yeah, because that's, I think Nathan Caldwell has a question there. Let me have him ask you this.
Okay.
Now, how did you come up with your title?
Oh yeah. So that's what I was going to get into. I was trying to figure out, based on the topics, I was like, I want to do apologetics. I also have ideas about economics that I wanted to do also at the time. And so I was thinking of the Truth and Freedom podcast. So, basically, okay, my ideas about liberty and also my apologetics. And so that name eventually changed before I can do anything. And then I was trying to figure out, like, I need a name that's kind of catchy. And so I thought, I thought about creating a podcast based on the fact that Andrew Rappaport, that you interviewed last episode, had a daily podcast that's 2 minutes pretty much on the dot, Monday through Friday. And I thought maybe I should do something like that. Maybe that would be the easiest way to have a podcast. I can just research.
The daily podcast is rough.
Yeah, I soon found that out, and I started to figure out, like, well, maybe instead of having, 5-minute episodes, maybe I should do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and do like 10-minute episodes or something like that. And then I started to cut back. Well, maybe how about 15-minute episodes, 2 days a week, and then eventually, I settled on once a week.
Yeah, a weekly schedule is a really good schedule to keep. I think the trick behind Andrew's daily is he saves it all up, and he does all 5 shows on like the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
He just slices it, or he just cuts them up in 2-minute segments. So he sits down and record them all, but he has the breaks so that they break apart, which is smart.
Yeah, I thought of doing that too, and that's why I thought of Truth Espresso like being like your morning coffee, and just some quick little shot of something. But then I figured, okay, I was thinking of just quick little topics, and then even that was just a little bit overwhelming because it would be easier to just ramble on if I know one topic. And so then I went to, I'll just do one episode a week, even though I'll still retain Truth Espresso. I don't know how much that will make sense with just one episode a week, but I figured, if I get enough episodes out there, people might just binge listen to it maybe, and they'll listen to it every day. So maybe that'll work.
Yeah, well, I think Nathan has our question here. He's,
I don't like coffee. Should I still listen?
Well, yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
I know there's caffeine in, you could probably put espresso in other drinks like energy drinks, maybe disguise it so that you can't taste the coffee.
You'd be shaking like a chihuahua or something.
It's like, oh, well, I guess if the truth outweighs the espresso, then maybe it'll be worth it for Nathan. But
I guess you could enjoy your favorite drink.
yes. Enjoy whatever drink you want, Nathan, but, I highly encourage you to listen to Truth Espresso.
Yeah, I like the concept. I like the opening where, with the chainsaw. Yeah, we play your promo from time to time on the show. We squeeze it in. And so I'm sure our listeners are familiar with that. If they haven't listened to your show, I would highly encourage them to do that. Now, I know because both Nathan and I, we kind of have a bit of a background in audio drama. Before we hooked up as co-hosts, he had a podcast, which he still does, where he does short audio dramas from time to time. And I did a retro radio podcast for years before I even started doing this one, and I still do, which of course involves, old time radio dramas. And so we were really into that kind of thing. And that's why I went back and listened to your old radio commercials that you did, whether you like them or not. I do.
Yeah.
But Nathan has a question.
Recently, you went off your usual track of lessons and lectures, didn't you? What were you thinking?
Referring to your audio drama.
Oh, are you talking about the Tale of the Superblians?
Okay, I have to admit, the sci-fi story was awesome, and it had some great teaching in there as well. The Superblians remind me of Christian conservatives. We share what is right, but there's often blowback. Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, well, let's see. So
yeah, I liked it too. You did all the voices. I have to say, I for a little bit thought about doing an audio drama where I voice things, but I didn't know how that would work. And you do a good job at it with changing the tone and pitch.
I tried to imitate, because there are people in the Tale of the Superblians who are real people, but they're parodies of them, and I tried, but failed miserably to imitate their voices. But so
like if you had I don't know, not Donald Trump, but you do his voice or do a Mickey Mouse voice, you would try to imitate that, and it didn't work.
Yeah, I think it's my personality, but I have a hard time referring to people. If I'm supposed to be that person, I've got to try to imitate their voice.
Yeah, you kind of have to get into their headspace a little bit, I think.
So do you want to know about where that whole idea came from, the Tale of the Superblians?
So you can take that and attack it however you want.
Yeah. Well, so kind of a basic background to how I came up with that story. I know that if you've heard of some of the dystopian novels, you have Atlas Shrugged and stuff like that. Now I wanted to do something. I've had kind of the idea about aliens invading in a way, but their invasion is actually a good thing. But it was based on kind of the way I'd see politics trending, such that it's people would tend to kill the goose that laid the golden egg, as it were. So I've even years ago, I've seen people economists, free market economists, explain, they'd ask people the question, what if you had a magic wand that if you waved it, it would, you could create things from nothing, or you could end world hunger, would that be a good thing? But then people are influenced by the prevailing economics, Keynesianism. Actually, they start to think and say well, it might seem like a beneficial thing, but first of all, that will put certain people out of a job, and that would be horrible. So and if you put some people out of a job, then you end up causing a depression, and that would destroy the economy. Even if you think it helps it, actually destroy it.
For an example, you mentioned world hunger. I mean, Would that be a good example? Let's say you did end world hunger, and people in third world countries now have enough to eat, enough their daily requirement. How might that be a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is common sense. It would be a good thing. Even the Bible talks about feeding the hungry, taking care of the orphans and widows. And so, even if we had the equivalent of a magic wand or benevolent aliens invading and introducing technology, I would think from a Christian perspective, that would be a good thing to help improve people's lives. And so the whole idea there is to show, yeah, duh, as it's a good thing. Common sense says it's a good thing, but people have been led astray by politics, and the idea of the government controlling things, and especially, the evil that I consider the Keynesian idea that gets people to think the exact opposite of the truth. And so, get people to pit against other people, and then they look at the idea like, well, it's unfair that these Superblians can get the best jobs, or they have things that are better, and so equality of outcome is better than how good things actually are for the bottom line. And so I actually try to work in contemporary thinking into the story to try to get people to understand, like, wait a minute, like I had that unsettling comment by the main character's friend where he asks, like, did we do the right thing?
Yeah. And I happened to just thinking, like for world hunger, let's say suddenly there was enough, rice bowls to feed everybody. Well, then people become dissatisfied or take it for granted, much like manna in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
It's free food, but they grumbled about it from,
Yeah.
almost day one. So yeah, maybe, world hunger, it's not just a matter of conquering it. Once you fit that need, people are going to find a different need to gripe about.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's a good illustration with the Israelites in the wilderness. They had supernatural provision of everything they needed, but then they thought, well, there's an injustice here because it's not the way I think it should be.
Yeah. Now, another question from Nathan.
So will the Superblians ever come back?
So by come back, Nathan, do you mean like, am I going to have a sequel, or does it mean like, will the Superblians, after having left, come back to Earth?
Well,
will we be hearing any other tales from you?
Oh, well,
yeah. Will there be a sequel?
Yeah, I have to think of, if I'm going to make a sequel, how it would turn out any different from the first one, and like what other lessons can I do. But as far as the Superblians coming back, that would depend on how they feel that they can be safely invited back to Earth again and not end up having to gather their things and leave again.
Because your story didn't end with like massive war and closing the doors and burning bridges behind them. They feasibly could come back if the right lesson came along.
Yeah, it's like dystopian light. Okay, so
like I said, we enjoyed the audio dramas, and so yeah, we both of us got a kick out of the Superblian tales.
Cool.
We don't have a classic this time, but as far as a nonfiction of the week or the month or whatever it is, why don't you head on over to truthspresso.com to find tons of great content from a biblical worldview. Many topics, one worldview. Folks, why do we care about the worldview? Well, The reason I care is because it has to do with truth. Truth is not relative, as some claim. Opinions are relative, but the truth is still the truth. And folks, the truth is, mankind, everyone, minus Jesus Christ himself, I'll get back to that in a moment, but everyone is a sinner. We have all rebelled against God. We are all traitors to the kingdom of heaven. Traitors and rebels of God himself. The Bible says that while we were yet in this state, Jesus Christ died for us. You see, Jesus is God. Second person in the Godhead, comes to earth, fully God and fully man at this point because he's born of a virgin. Lives a perfect life, never messes up, never sins. Even though he's tempted in the same points we are tempted. He never sinned. And then they hang him on a tree. Now, this is God we're talking about. Do you really think they could have done that had he not let them? The answer is no. They could not have done that without him letting them. But you see, before the foundation of the world, the plan was set that Jesus would come and die for sinners. For those who trust Christ, get his righteousness on them, just as he took their sin. And the Bible says what you got to do is believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and you'll be saved. You know you're a sinner? Ask God to forgive you. Believe that Jesus did what he said he did and trust him for your eternal life today. Thank you for listening to Life Truth Presents. Daniel Mynyk can be heard at truthespresso.com. Nathan Caldwell can be found at life-truth.com and is also a writer and reviewer for Clean Fiction Magazine, which can be found at cleanfictionmagazine.com.